Welcome to the Ground Jewels. My name is James Dixon and I'm delighted that you've joined us again this week because we get to talk cricket. It's summer, the T20 World Cup has started and it's the absolute right time to talk cricket. I'm talking cricket with one of its more interesting and newer voices, Aatif Nawaz, the comedian, the commentator, the England fan, the Pakistan fan. You'll learn all about Aatif, and he has a really interesting story in the interview that we recorded. It is that he's picked the Rose Bowl in Southampton as his ground jewel. We will, at some point in the far, far future, maybe get to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena as a ground jewel. Not only does that host the annual Rose Bowl game, a college football tradition going back almost 100 years, probably more than 100 years. I haven't researched that, but it hosted the 1994 World Cup final as well between Brazil and Italy. So, yeah, other Rose Bowl coming in the future, but this Rose Bowl, known as the Utilita Bowl at the moment, or you may know it as the Aegeus Bowl for fans of stadium sponsorship, if there can be such a thing, is the home of Hampshire, the Southern Brave, and for a short time, it was Aatif's home as well, because it was the Rose Bowl and Old Trafford that got cricket back going after the COVID pandemic in 2020. And so we talk about that really interesting time when he was living at the ground in the hotel that's built into the ground, and he was sharing the ground with his cricketing heroes, Wasim, Akram, Warne, etc., etc. So, I hope you really enjoy it. Regular listeners will know that we try and do some stadium news from around the world before our interviews each week. And there's three big stories this week. Well, two big stories and one that I want to talk about. And, it's my podcast. So we had the Champions League at Wembley this weekend, Saturday. Dortmund were brilliant and Real Madrid won. So yeah, kind of predictable. But it was noticeable. The security improvements at Wembley compared to the Euro 2020 final. There was still an attempt of fans trying to ticketless fans trying to force their way to Wembley, but I think it was it's an improvement. I guess Wembley made itself a target of sort of how lax security was during COVID, and I know that was sort of a combination of factors of people knowing that the final there were empty seats in the stadium and blah 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 blah, in England of course, but it's good to see improvement, if not perfect security there. Yeah. So France says it's forward an attack targeting one of the football stadiums we use for the Summer Olympics. It wasn't an attack that was apparently going to happen in Paris. It was going to be at Saint Etienne, which is down in the sort of, eastern side of the country, sort of the middle, a little bit near Lyon. So it's kind of good, I guess, that they've thwarted this attack, but also, worrying. What we've seen recently is it's not that long ago that we had Swedish fans caught up in violence attending the Euros qualifier in Belgium. We've obviously had attacks at sporting events before, Boston Marathon. You go back to the Olympic Games in 1996, there's the Centennial Park bombing as well, where the games itself were targeted. So, yeah, I was at a talk this week with Seb Coe, to drop a big name in there, well, two little names, but you know what I mean. And he was talking about the security situation as well as other things around the Olympics in Paris, and he's the man who was ultimately responsible for the security situation in London 2012. And he was saying that the challenges that Paris has are exponentially bigger than London had in 2012. And obviously that games went off without a hitch. And we very much hope that the Paris 2024 games will go off without a hitch as well. And now the smaller story, but the one that I want to talk about, is Ospreys rugby, is the Ospreys relocation from what I still call the Liberty Stadium. The club's never got good crowds there, really, certainly not in recent years. the ground's too big for it, and they're looking to relocate to a cheaper, more appropriately sized ground. They're considering Brewery Field in Bridgend. They're considering St Helens in Swansea itself, which is a great historic ground where cricket and football coexist for a number of years. It's where Gary Sobers hit 6 sixes in a first-class match for the first time. It's featured many times on Grandstand. You'll recognise it. It's got amazing sort of terracing, really close to the waterfront there on Oystermouth Road as well. The one place they're not considering is Neath and the Knoll, the other great historic ground in the Ospreys region. Neath and the WIU have fallen out quite badly over a number of things, not including allocations of places in competitions. Ospreys have stopped loaning players to Neath as well for development. It's gone a little bit sour there, so they'll end up in either St Helens or Bridgend. It could be a good move to. It could reinvigorate the club, get it closer to its community, or, with the parlous state of Welsh rugby's finances, it could be the sort of beginning of the end and death by 1,000 cuts type thing, sort of perennially cutting your cloth and then not having a competitive team, and then people not wanting to come because the team's not competitive, and entering a sort of death spiral. I obviously very much hope it's not that case. That's not the case, but there are serious questions over as whether Wales can sustain 4 fully professional teams at European rugby level. They've not been into the knockouts of the Champions Cup for a long, long time, certainly not deep into the knockouts of I think we're going back to 2008, 2009 when Cardiff were in the semi-final. Maybe Llanelli had a semi-final in there when they were really good, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago as well. But it's slim pickings for Welsh rugby at a continental level, and they're not doing that much better in the URC either. So big questions have to be asked to the WRU, and have they got the answers? And are the answers going to be painful? Who knows? But enough about that. You want to hear cricket.
So today we're joined by a comedian, an actor, a writer, and a cricket commentator, Aatif Nawaz. Welcome to the Ground Jewels.
Thank you, James, for having me. It's a long business card trying to fit all those things on there, but looking forward to talking about one of those things today.
Yeah. I had to trim it a little because you've done a lot in recent years, actually, and I guess the newest string to that bow would be cricket commentator. And I guess maybe the ground we're going to talk about today is part of the reason how you've got into that. We're going to talk about the Rose Bowl, home since 2001 to Hampshire County Cricket Club, and perhaps uniquely also home to yourself as well during the 2020 season when the ECB set up a biosecure bubble so international cricket could return. So how many nights did you live at the Rose Bowl?
I was there for 12 nights in sequence. So yeah, it was a really bizarre. It was a bizarre time for the whole world, I suppose. But it was a really unique circumstance in which to make your Test match special debut, official sort of Test debut. I'd done sort of peripheral things for TMS before then, like we do coverage of the IPL and the T20 Blast and various other things. But like my first Test match was going to be the touring Pakistan series. So there were back-to-back Test tours during COVID. The West Indies came first and then Pakistan came over. And they played their first Test in Old Trafford, which I wasn't a part of, but the next 2 Tests were going to happen at the Rose Bowl. And part of that was us being in a bio bubble at the Rose Bowl for those 2 Test matches. So we would, everybody, they ask you, they're like, are you sure you're okay with this? You're going to be away from your family. You're essentially locked in a cricket stadium for a fortnight. How do you feel about that? And I was, frankly, it's a childhood dream come true, like to be locked in a cricket stadium. It was a really quite extraordinary experience, and one that I'll treasure forever.
It's strange, isn't it? Because at that time as well, I could have think nothing better than getting away from my family and having a little break and being able to just focus on cricket. But the weather didn't help, did it? Because the second Test match, you're on TMS, and I guess one of the challenges with TMS is and one of the joys and why so many sort of even non-cricket lovers love TMS is, what do you do when there's no cricket to talk about? So first of all, we've got no crowd. And then for a large part of that second test match, there's no cricket happening because of the weather. It's quite the baptism for you.
Yeah, but oddly, it sort of worked to my favor because there was a lot of rain about, which meant we were doing a lot of what we call filling, right? So we got to talk about various things about like the teams and analysis and history and things like that. And I don't think they didn't expect it necessarily, but I think I gave a reasonably good accounting of myself just because I'd followed English and Pakistani cricket my whole life, so I had a lot to say about various things. There was a lot of really strong feedback for the content that I was contributing, and I got a chance to be on the highlights for the first time. That was the first time I got to be on the highlights at the Rose Bowl. I did this piece about translating the team, so that Pakistan team, which is similar to the current Pakistan team, is very unique in the sense that they're multilingual. They're speaking various different languages, English obviously, but also Urdu, Punjabi, Pashto. They're mixing all these things up. So I just did a little piece where I was breaking down the languages they were speaking in a specific phase of play, and it struck a chord with people. Like, people think it's difficult, and it can be very difficult. I've been there, on those county championship days where there's not a lot happening, there's not a lot to talk about, and you've got to just fill airtime. But this was easy. I could have gone on and on and on and on and on, and I guess some people will tell you that I did, but it just kind of worked out. It kind of worked out nicely.
It was a lovely little segment. It was just when, I think it was maybe day 4, England were just posting up in reply, back in the glory days of Dom Sibley and Rory Burns opening the batting for us. And you were just analysing the sort of the chirping. And the thing that struck me is, it was so similar to what happens on any village cricket green around the country. Sometimes you think, these international sports people, they're operating on this higher plane, and physically, of course they are, but it's all just blather and a bit of BS and, just encouragement, regardless of what language you're kind of communicating in. There was a lot of love and warmth, both towards the West Indies and Pakistan, for taking on this burden of coming to England during that time, putting themselves in those bio bubbles. I mean, some of those players were in the bio bubble for almost 3 months and didn't actually even play, which feels pretty harsh. And but I think it was a time when we were all just glad to have something else to focus on. What were the highs and lows of the Rose Bowl in terms of firstly as a living experience?
Yeah, I think there were no more than about 100 people in the stadium, counting everybody. Your camera crew, your tech crew, your broadcasters, the players, and the support staff of the teams. There weren't a lot of people there. I think in that scenario, the camaraderie sort of boosted. So if I'm working at, let's say, Lords, right? It's sort of 7 tube stops from my house, so I'll go to the match. I'll say hi to people as I come across them, but I'll sort of do my job. Have some grub, finish the game, do the analysis, and just hop on the Jubilee line back home, right? That's what I'll probably do. But you can't do that when you're in a bio bubble, right? So the game is finished, or the day's play is finished, and you're still around the same group of people. You get together in the bar, you get together in the restaurants, you sit outside, you go for walks, and you're sort of forced to be social, which sort of worked again to my advantage. So we've got people like Wasim Akram is there, the late great Shane Warne is there. Michael Holding is there, Michael Aatif, all the Sky team is there, the BBC team is there. And I remember thinking, well, this is remarkable. I'm going to get a chance to spend time with these people that I probably wouldn't get in a normal setting. Shane Warne, God rest his soul, he's outside having a cigarette and I can just sort of walk over and chat to him while he's doing that. And obviously, just control the urge inside me to fanboy shamelessly. But it was just such an amazing thing, because there was this camaraderie. People did miss their kids and their other halves and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people did miss them, but I didn't have any kids or other halves. So I call my mum once a day, and that's all good. And now I'm just spending time with the people around me and sort of mining them for stories and sharing a few of my own. And there was one night where Wasim Akram was really bored, and he said to me, "I've heard you've been on a TV show. You're on a comedy TV show here in England." I'm like, yeah, I'm on the show. He's like, "How do I watch it? Is it on Netflix?" I'm like, "Well, no, it's on BBC iPlayer." And he said, "How do you sign up to BBC iPlayer?" And I was like, "Well, here's and he kind of like gave up on it very quickly. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to watch that." So I remember like finding the show, making a version of it, putting it on a private link on YouTube, and sending it to him so he could watch it for ease, just because I really wanted Wasim Akram to see my comedy. So, I was like, I'll go through this huge tech effort. It was remarkable. They put us up in the Hilton. There's a Hilton hotel on site at the Ageas Bowl and at Old Trafford. But yeah, at the Ageas Bowl they put us up there, and it was a beautiful facility. Like even now, outside of COVID, if you ever get a chance to stay there, it's difficult on match days because the pitch facing rooms get taken very quickly. But if you get a chance to get a pitch facing room, it is remarkable because you can put it on your TV screen in your room, and then you can look out your balcony, and it's happening right there in front of you. You can stand over your balcony and watch the action. It is one of the most privileged spots you can get in all sports around the world. I've seen some incredible spots around the world, but I feel like at the Rose Bowl, they've got a great view at Old Trafford as well. But the Rose Bowl, you're right there. You're right in the midst of it. It's a very cool place to watch cricket.
That sounds really good. And you obviously checked the unlisted video on YouTube, the view count, just to make sure that Wasim Akram and how long he was stayed engaged with it. Did he stay engaged through the whole show? Or
Well, we had a chat. I didn't check that. I probably should have checked that, but I did speak to him the day after, and we had a really good chat. And he was telling me about a comedy program he had coming up that he was doing, and he was sort of, I think he was nervous about having to wear a wig or something like that. And so I'd worn a few wigs in the show, so I was telling him about the process, and I played down the cumbersomeness of wearing wigs on TV, although anyone who's had to do it will tell you it's just such a long process. I mean, they work so hard. They get you this like the wig is there, and then there's a bit of lining at the front that they have to blend into your forehead with makeup, and it just takes ages, and you can't touch it. The urge to scratch your head has never been stronger than when you've got someone else's hair on it. Yeah, it was that we had a good chat about it. He enjoyed it. It all just sort of felt like a bit of a fever dream, if I'm honest with you. Like all of these people are around me, like over the years, and that was sort of 4 years ago. Over the years, I've gotten to know, Aggers a lot better. I count Aggers as a friend, as well as a colleague, obviously, and Tuffers as well. Tuffers was my next door neighbor, as it were. So, we'd have loads of nice late night chats on the balcony or from each other's balconies because you weren't allowed to be in each other's rooms and things like that. So, yeah, it was Azhar Mahmood was there. Ended up playing golf with Azhar Mahmood. That was quite something. Ahead of us in the queue, we had Waqar Yunus and Muhammad Hafiz playing golf. So I ended up in this random foursome with like Muhammad Hafiz, Waqar Yunus, and Azhar Mahmood, and me. I mean, who's the ugliest guy in that group? So like it was just it's a time of life I look back to really fondly. Like the Rose Bowl, I've been to before and since many, many, many times, and it's always been really fun. I've been there for international cricket. I got to go there one of the first times I was presenting the highlights for the BBC on TV. So, interviewed Josh Butler in his first T20 as captain. He just got a golden duck, so it wasn't a great day to interview him, but there you go. Rohit Sharma, like it was really cool. It's just a ground that's always given me some incredible opportunities. So, it's always got a special place in my heart.
you can tell that in terms of how fondly you're talking about it, and I think for me and for a lot of people, because obviously it's a fairly new ground. It's out of town as well. It's about 4 or 5 miles out of Southampton, which has its positives and its negatives. It's quite easily accessed. So the first time I became aware of the Rose Bowl was in 2005, and they hosted England's first T20 game against Australia, and it was a shock, and it was we were seeing a different new form of cricket that we hadn't seen internationally before, and it was the first time I saw England take the fight to Australia, and obviously we know what that summer went on to do, but I'll always remember this sort of this new ground, and also it felt like a new England. What are some of your best general memories of the Rose Bowl?
So generally, the Rose Bowl, like, I mean, I find it very hard to look past that particular phase. Like, I always think about that. But again, like, it's not always super popular, but I've had a chance to commentate on a lot of Southern Brave matches there for the 100. And I got to work extensively with Michael Carberry because that was his home ground for so long, right? Hampshire. He is one of my favorite people to work with. He has this beautiful energy. He's really giving. He's got an amazing personality. Like, in my opinion, one of the most underused, like, cricket broadcaster, pundit, whatever you want to call them, people in the world, because he's just so much fun. And like, we did so many games together, myself, him, Chris Green. We did a lot of 100 games together where we had so much fun. Like, we were given a little bit more leeway to be a bit crazier on those broadcasts. So we did, and there's a lot of sort of high pitch squealing towards the end when games got tight and things like that. I just like, I mean, there was that first, there were a few England games that I've seen there. I tell you what, if you want a specific memory, I can tell you this. England versus South Africa, T20, I think it was the year that England won the European Championship. The England women's team won the football European Championship. So it would be 2022, I want to say. Is that right?
It's 22, but it was called Euro 2021, I think.
It was, yeah, because of COVID, the years went weird. But it was the year that the women won the European Championship, and we were following it intensely. So we had a TV screen set up because that was going to start as our game was going to finish. So we had it ready to go in the Rose Bowl, and bless those hotel suites because you could just get all sorts of screens ready to go and things like that. And everybody wanted to stick around. There was a party atmosphere. We got a very strong England cricket team. We're going to watch the women win later. Like, everybody's really excited. And then South Africa proceeded to batter England in that particular T20. Like, it was really bizarre. It was sort of against the run of play almost, but South Africa just smashed it. I had to go and do post-match interviews with Joss and with Keshav Maharaj, who was the captain of the South African team. So I did the post-match interviews, came back to the broadcasting room, and everybody had gone. They were like, no, just didn't feel like sticking around, and like, it's fine. We'll listen to it on the radio. Oh God! All right, fine. So I sat there by myself, and there were a couple of people working at the Rose Bowl, like in the hotel, like some of the hotel staff, and they were like, "Are you working here?" I'm like, "Well, we just finished, but I wanted to watch the football. That's okay." And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine. Can you tell us the score?" So I stayed there to watch the end of the football. Of course, England won that game. It was amazing. What a huge moment for women's sports around the world, all sport really, the way England came through, and I watched it there sitting on the floor in the Rose Bowl after England had lost a T20 international to South Africa. It was just such a bizarre day. I remember posting a picture to my Instagram from that day of myself interviewing Keshav Maharaj and Joss Butler, and they were also like, they got a lot of love on social media. It's really bizarre. Like, it's not the thing you expect, to get the big response in terms of social media response. But yeah, there you go. There's a long-winded answer for you, James, but essentially, it's when I think of the Rose Bowl, it's sort of an amalgamation of memories that don't often have a lot to do with what's happening in the middle. It's more about what we're doing sort of behind the scenes and things like that. And when you watch as much cricket as I do, it does tend to blend into one another after a while.
And that's absolutely fine. I think Michael Carberry's not just an underused pundit; he was an underused as a player by England, and perhaps very quickly discarded. And we went through a whole trouble until trying to find an opening batsman, and we never seemed to go back to him. But yeah, that's just a personal opinion there of mine. I think with the you're talking about the 100, and I get that it's not popular. There is some people who don't like it for the divisiveness of it in terms of pitting some counties against the other. But what I think is unquestionable in the success of the 100 is what it's done for the women's game, and the way that it's brought on the women's game and given it a much more prominence. And I think it's I'm pro 100 from certainly from that perspective. What's a Southern Brave game day like then compared to a Hampshire T20 contest in the Blast, or compared to some of the other venues? Because it is one of the smaller 100 venues. It is one of the newer venues, and they've been one of the more successful teams.
Yeah, the last time I went to see Hampshire in the Blast was probably in 2018. So it's been a long old time since I last went to see a Blast game at the Rose Bowl. It's just the way the fixtures break down. Like, my team is Middlesex. My sort of adopted team is Warwickshire. So those are the teams I go and see for fun when I'm not working. Although often I end up working there as it is. But yeah, I can tell you that, like, in terms of partisan atmospheres, like the Rose Bowl is right up there. It's just, when you think about it, the 100 is a competition that's about 3 seasons old. So it's very new. As you say, there's a lot of divisiveness to it. But the atmosphere that the organizers have managed to create at these games, it can be a little bit hit and miss. I know it's a bit like that at the Oval with the Oval Invincibles, but it's like that with Surrey. Like with sort of Surrey Oval, they've managed to get their branding ducks in a row. So you sort of understand that. But Southern Brave coming into Hampshire's house and drawing that kind of intense support, like the cheering, like we're right in amongst it from our commentary vantage point, because we're still in the hotel suites looking out over the crowd, and you just hear the noise that crowd creates. It is phenomenal. It's sort of unmatched in terms of partisan atmosphere in cricket venues, I would say. You go to Lord's, you don't get that. You go to Old Trafford, you get sort of a bit of that, but not that much. You go to Northern Supercharge, it's not the same at Headingley. So, and the closest thing is like when you get the London Derby happening, i.e. Middlesex versus Surrey, at the Oval. Not at Lord's. At Lord's is a little bit more muted. But at the Oval, you get that kind of like, the middle, sex, which is always a weird chant to do. And then you get the re, up the re. And so you get that sort of, that tribal kind of pantomime, back and forth. You don't see that often with the 100, but you definitely see it at the Southern Brave games. And as you said, you see it in the women's and the men's games. The noise, the cheering, it's phenomenal, and it makes for great radio, especially when we do it on the radio. It just sounds really good. So, I think that's something that's very unique to the Rose Bowl, and something I always look forward to seeing when I'm out there.
It's nice, isn't it? Especially when you get that. I'd also throw in obviously the Roses matches as well. Particularly either in the Blast or I imagine in the. I've not been to a Roses match in a. Well, I guess they're technically not Roses matches, but you know what I mean. An Originals versus Superchargers, whatever that would be called, match in the 100. But partisanship is not something that cricket does very often. But when it's done well, I think it can really add to it. Biggest example is one of the rarest examples as well, and one that you've probably got a few memories of, or at least your opinion on. And it's the game that we don't get in world cricket anywhere near often enough, which is India versus Pakistan. I remember, not even at a game, I remember being at a student union when that was on in the, I think maybe 2003 World Cup, or certainly one World Cup. There's an India-Pakistan game that's happening. And they have to divide the student union in half. India fans on the one side, Pakistan fans on the other side, watching the TV. Literally, like security between them. And I know we're going to get it. We're going to get it in New York this year, which is strange. There's countries like New York, places like New York and South Africa, and get to host India-Pakistan games, whereas there hasn't been a India-Pakistan international in Pakistan for about 15 years. What are your sort of thoughts on that, and what's the sort of cricket watching experience in Pakistan like? Because we're sort of pleased that international cricket is returning to Pakistan, and teams like England are touring there again.
Yeah, I mean, I had the privilege to attend the first Test match back in Pakistan after their long sort of exile from cricket. That was Pakistan versus Sri Lanka, and it happened in Rawalpindi at the Rawalpindi Cricket Stadium, which was also where England decided to pile on the runs in 2022 and break various records. But that's neither here nor there, really. It was an electric atmosphere. They really tried their best to get people in. There's extensive security and a slightly cumbersome ticketing process at Pakistani cricket grounds, where you have to sort of have an email and have a printout of an email and show it to a certain person before you can. It is a little bit awkward, I'm not going to lie. But once you're in and the game is happening and the game is engaging, like that crowd just goes nuts. It's a little bit cliche, but the big stars, people like Babar Azam, when they're batting, they get a phenomenal response from the crowd. There's the police out to get me. Yeah, I mean, the Rawalpindi is exquisite. Again, it's one of my favorite places to watch cricket. My family originally is from a city called Lahore in Pakistan, so they have their own sort of cricketing dynasty. But I can honestly say I've always enjoyed watching cricket in Rawalpindi more. It's not unlike the Rose Bowl. It's got a sort of bowl-esque feel. It's not as low down as the Rose Bowl. So the reason they call it the Rose Bowl, obviously, is because the pitch itself is a little bit lower. It's like a bowl, and the crowd sort of rises above it, around it, sort of Coliseum-esque. But Rawalpindi has a similar vibe in its sort of construction, Obviously, it's been done up. It was done up ahead of that Sri Lanka series, and it was just great. It was really there was a genuine sense of like this is a big moment. Like cricket's coming back, and since then we've seen huge teams come back over there. New Zealand, Australia, England, South Africa. Various teams have been over there and had a good experience. So I think Pakistani cricket in terms of hosting cricket very much on the road to recovery, and India, Pakistan, that's going to take a while. I think it might take longer than any of us would like to accept. But for me, I would love to in my lifetime one time see an India Pakistan fixture happen in Pakistan again. We had it in India in the World Cup last year, and it became a very one-sided affair. It started well for Pakistan, and then it just sort of went in a completely different direction. But I'd love to see the opposite of that, the opposite fixture in Pakistan at some stage in my lifetime. I'm not. I have to say in my life. The fact that I have to say in my lifetime, James, tells you how awkward the scenario is at the moment for getting those two teams in the same room.
I mean, you're only in your 30s as well. It's not like it's not like Agger's saying in his lifetime.
Listen, Agars, the way he looks after himself is going to live. He's going to outlive us all. He's going to live forever.
That's wonderful to hear. Well, I guess the opportunity would be 2025. You've got the Champions Trophy scheduled to go to Pakistan, and it is these ICC events where we're seeing these meetings. So, fingers crossed. And then if it happens by, I'm sure. Call me a cynic. I can't imagine, or maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure somehow India and Pakistan will be separated in the group phase. I'm just guessing that will happen. But once it gets to the knockout phase, and if the two teams meet in the final, then it's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, cricket doesn't even pretend to be meritocratic anymore at that level. I mean, we knew that because of the reserve days that they had in the Asia Cup last year. There was a whole farce about the way they organize it, but that's fine. I think everybody sort of acknowledges that that's where the money is. Right. Yes, Australia, England, Ashes is where the history is, and the prestige in many ways, but like the sort of the big contest in cricket, despite whatever phase either team is going through, is always India versus Pakistan. That's a huge fixture. And the fact that there's a little bit of scarcity to it nowadays makes it even more sort of high tensioned and more like, it's kind of, it both amuses me and annoys me, James, because it's like you get a lot of sort of cricket casuals coming in to sort of cash in and let's make some content, and I want to make some content about this game and let's make it, and they sort of like, I know people who will go to their calendars and block out their day and begin praying like 5 days before, because they're really invested in the game and the fixture, and they don't look at it as a marketing opportunity. But it is. Anytime you're going to have like a billion plus people watching anything, it is a marketing opportunity, and I sort of accept that. But for me, it's like there's no India Pakistan game I've ever seen in my life where I was chilled out watching it, so it's very hard to be chill. I hope we get to see it. I think there's a good chance we'll get to host it in England at some stage, a test series. I think both teams are very cordial with England. I know Australia's made some overtures, and America, let's see how this World Cup goes. There's sort of tempered expectations about it for good reason. Maybe it'll be amazing, but I think eventually India Pakistan will play a test series in England. Who knows? Maybe they'll play a test at the Rose Bowl.
You could pack out any ground in the country. I mean, I've been to was it Old Trafford when India played Pakistan in the 19 World Cup?
Yeah,
oh, what an atmosphere! That was absolutely electric. I want to talk to you a little bit about Middlesex while we have you, because they're your sort of home county there, and they're going through a little bit of tough time. Is that fair? Tough time for Middlesex at the moment. They're playing some games away in Essex at the moment, because obviously the relationship between Middlesex and the MCC and 100 and all the fixture congestion stuff that was often talked about with Lords and historic fixtures, blah 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 blah. And there was a report out this week that Middlesex are considering leaving Lords and building a third, sort of what they've termed as a third world first class cricket venue in London. Is this sort of negotiating position, as sometimes it is, or is there a real prospect of Middlesex leaving Lords?
Oof. I don't think anyone's willingly going to leave. I feel like it's a negotiation. I really hope it is, James, because it's one of the few joys I have in life. A few joys. That sounds so
That's so
a lack of
bleak.
gratitude. But like it's a big
You're on
big joy.
TMS, man.
It's a huge joy in my life that I can walk from where I'm speaking to you from now. From here, it's about a 10-minute walk to Wembley Park Tube Station, which is 5 tube stops away from St John's Wood, which is a 5-minute walk to the ground, and another 5 minutes maybe through the people to the media centre. And I go up there and I get to watch cricket, and it's amazing. And it's and I know there's finals. I get to do the 100 final and things like that every year. And I get to the Blast final at Edgbaston as well, which I also love. But there's something about having the home of cricket that close to you that I've never let myself get into a position where I take it for granted. Like, I've walked into many press boxes and seen many glum faces before, and I'm kind of like, come on, man, you're at the cricket. Like, you're being paid to be at the cricket. There's 65 people out there who are outside the ground and they can't get in. There's like, at least a couple of thousand people in the ground right now who spent their money to be here, who are going to spend more money on drinks and food and all that kind of stuff. Like, you're being paid. This is a privilege. Like, and it's a privilege. I understand some people are very good at their jobs and they don't have to love what they do, but I feel like it should almost be reserved for people who adore cricket, that spot in the media centre. And so I feel this responsibility when I walk in, like, regardless of how I'm feeling, what's going on, had an argument with my girlfriend or, a row with my parents, whatever it is, right? When I walk in there, it's never less than a privilege to walk into Lord's Cricket Ground, go up those lifts. Yeah, I should take the stairs, but I take the lifts, up to the media centre, get a slice of cake if it's being served. Lovely mushroom soup on county championship days, actually. It's very, very nice. And just watch cricket. So I really hope they don't move from a selfish perspective, but I do understand the sort of romanticism of cricket, like bringing it in line with football. There's no tenant of Wembley Stadium. Like, that's where teams go to play their finals. If they were going to do that with Lords, then maybe, but I just think I don't think it will happen. I think Middlesex will they'll be at Lords forever. Well, at least, if I can use that phrase again, in our lifetimes.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because you've also got the economics of it, and we know how much counties are reliant on non-cricketing activities, particularly ones who aren't hosting 100 franchises, to generate income, to make their business model sustainable. Things that Leicestershire, Grace Road is a concert venue more than a cricket ground.
Elton John played it. Elton John played
know.
Grace Road. How cool is that?
I think Elton John has played most sports stadiums in this country. He's been on a permanent. He's played Carrow Road. I know he's played Vicarage Road a number of times. Now obviously he's stepping down, but there wasn't really a ground that Elton John wasn't comfortable playing, and fair enough. He's earned the right to do what he wants. You touched on it. It's the romantic. There is something in all of us sort of cricket lovers that is attracted to romanticism, isn't it? And we're not necessarily the most commercially minded of sports fans. We like our narratives and we like our stories. And I think it would be a shame for Middlesex if they weren't at Lords. And I know that they've played at other grounds. They've played at Merchant Taylor's and and Radlett. And there's something to be said in having outgrounds. And I love counties that have really good outgrounds. But you can't walk away from, like you said, the home of cricket. And you guys are so lucky in Northwest London. You've got Wembley Stadium, you've got Lords. I know you could go a whole hour on public transport and be at Wimbledon and Twickenham as well. It's all, on cheap, reliable, regular public transport. It could take you a whole hour to get to these stadiums. It's a great place to be a sports fan, London.
It is. It's just, a little bit after we record, a little bit later today, I'm taking a train to go watch football at a certain North London football ground. So, there's it is just the perfect place to, if you're a sports fan, and it's obviously outside beyond the stadiums. I know it's a stadium themed podcast, but like you go beyond the stadiums into these, the club grounds, just this beautifully maintained club cricket grounds. People always sort of downplay the city grounds. They're always, you got to go to the country. There's this village in I don't know, whatever area, and you're the Cotswolds, and you got to play on this ground, and I keep hearing about the Getty Ground. I've been to the Getty Ground. It's really, really nice. Wormsley Cricket Club. It's beautiful. But like, there's some great grounds in central London, in London, right? They're sort of hidden away, but they're there. And playing in that sort of Middlesex County League for many years, I got a chance to see a lot of them, and they're great. They're really nice. There's some that I always look forward to visiting, every season. Less so now because usually working on a game, but we try and squeeze in a few fixtures here and there. But it is like I really love London. Like I get frustrated with London for many different reasons, but it's always home, and I couldn't imagine living anywhere else.
It's wonderful, and I think there's. Obviously the Bank of England ground is particularly revered. But when I was living, I played in. I don't even know what league I played in because I lived in Acton, but the team were based in Rains Park, so I was probably in a Surrey league. I didn't care enough to know what league I was in. I was just told where to turn up. And there's some out towards Richmond and Ham. There's a place called Ham in London. There's a gorgeous cricket ground. It's nowhere near West Ham or East Ham. It's just out there. But there's so.
It's in the middle. It's in the middle of West Ham.
Yeah, it's just there's just so many nice little grounds. And the thing that I find talking to people about either big grounds or international grounds or really tiny ground, it's all about that connection and sense of place and the joy that people feel going into stadiums, and even in your case with the Rose Bowl, going into empty stadiums, because it's all about the possibility of what could happen. We will tolerate days of mediocrity and banality and drudgery and boredom for that special moment that you might get to see, like when you saw Zach Crawley smash 267. I won't ask you whether that. I'm not going to give you a live Tebbit test and ask you if you enjoyed that or didn't enjoy that.
I did enjoy it. I remember interviewing Zach and telling him how extraordinary it was. It was really good to see him get those runs, and then you sort of see a lot of England fans getting frustrated. Like, he's just living off that double hundred, blah blah blah. And then a couple of years later, he got 100 in Pakistan, on that 2022 tour on the first day. And I remember saying to Zach, I'm like, Zach, you just spread them out, but you could just do a few here, a few against them. But you spread them out, but you don't have to. But it was cool, actually. I got a video clip of him signing the honours board at the Rawalpindi Cricket Stadium, him and Ben Duckett. And he was like, could you send that to me? Oh, yeah, no problem, man. I'll send it to you. What's your number? I had to send it to you. And then Danny Rubin, as a team manager, was there, and I organised it through him. But it means stuff to players. I think often I've met a lot of sort of cricketing maverick types who was just so good at the game. And the players like Glenn Maxwell or whomever it may be, right? They're just so good. And they've achieved so much that that honour board might not mean, it's not that it means nothing to them, but they're not thinking about it that night. But I feel like when Zach did it in Pakistan, it was like a big moment. It was something that he really savoured, that moment. He really wanted to have the record of that moment. So yeah, it was nice. And the thing, you stop seeing cricket from when you're working particularly and you're invested in these players' lives a little bit, you spend any amount of time with Chris Wokes and you want to support anything he's ever involved with, no matter what it is. You're just, it's Chris Wokes, I'm in. You get so invested in these players and their stories and their lives and stuff that you kind of always want to see them do well. And you forget about sort of that traditional loyalty. Yeah, of course, if I'm at home and there's a Pakistan-New Zealand game on, I'm cheering Pakistan. I'm hoping they win. But when I'm working on cricket, and it's teams that I have an affinity for, and that's a lot of teams. Like the Sri Lankan women's team came over last year. We followed them. Always sort of was willing them to do well, even though they're playing against players who I would consider friends. In the England women's team. So it's a really weird thing. It messes with your mind a little bit working in cricket like this and being a cricket tragic, because you kind of want various people to be doing well and your loyalties get a little bit smushed in your head. So yeah, I think they need that. We could bring the Tebbit test back, but we'd need to, rework it a little bit. It needs to become like a 36-point isometric type questionnaire.
Yeah, it's like a matrix or a personality test.
There you go.
We've got he wasn't factoring in franchise cricket either when he did it, so it's just and obviously not necessarily with the most benign of intentions either. So we'll rename it too. But no, Thank you so much for your memories of the Rose Bowl, and wider. I can see the passion that you've got for cricket is clear. It's great to hear you on TMS, and hopefully we'll be hearing more from you this summer and in the future.
Absolutely. I very much hope so. I had a fun and somewhat lucrative career coming into cricket, which I sort of parked a little bit to do this because I love the game. I always loved it. And I feel a real privilege to have that proximity to cricket that I have. And I almost take it upon myself to make sure that I live the best version of this life for every fan like me who would love to be in this spot. So yeah, and the Rose Bowl, it will always be a special place in my heart. And yeah, if you're listening to this and you've never been to the Rose Bowl, just go for anything. Like even sort of day four county championship would be a great day to go. But whatever it is you can get a ticket for, go over to the Rose Bowl, watch some cricket. It's just a magical venue.
Thank you, Artie. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight and some of those fantastic memories. I love the idea of Wasim Akram struggling with tech, and getting incredibly frustrated trying to watch something. It's great to have that sort of dad energy from a world famous cricketer. But yeah, I think. I think that was a lovely interview. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to go back to some football. We've got a couple of options on the table. They're already recorded. I'm sort of demurring because I don't know. I don't know whether we're going to go. I don't know whether we're going to go big or slightly smaller. I've got one option is talking about St James's Park, Newcastle. One option is talking about the Valley in Charlton. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a poll up. Go on to Twitter at the Ground Jewels. You can tell us. You can tell me whether the next one you want to hear is the Valley or St James's Park. That'd be great. All the best. See you next time.